Welcome to the Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 podcast, where we're here to share valuable insight from leading health experts, heartwarming stories from people living with bronchiectasis and NTM lung disease, and the latest in health research and treatment. Please subscribe, follow us on social media, and visit bronchiectasis and NTM360.org to learn more. Just a quick note before we get started. This podcast series is intended for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Please consult with your medical provider if you have any questions. Today we have a truly inspiring guest joining us that is patient ambassador from Bronchiectasis and NTM 360, Keating. And we're going to be discussing how having a chronic illness can impact not only a person's physical health, but how it can impact a person's mental health. So Katie, thank you again so much for joining us. And can you just share a little bit about your journey with bronchiectasis and NTM lung disease and how it's impacted your overall well-being?
Hello, Alyssa. It's so great to be here. As Alyssa mentioned, my name is Keating. I'm a nurse. I'm a patient ambassador with the COPD Foundation. Diagnosed with any chronic health condition is overwhelming for an individual, especially when you were diagnosed with a rare disorder. I'm a registered nurse, and I had never heard of NTM. Bronchiectasis was not a common word back then either. Having a rare condition is often misunderstood because this condition is mostly invisible, and it's really emotionally challenging for many people going from having a good bit of health, feeling well, to carrying a label or diagnosis. Initially, most people are in a stage of disbelief, anger, and fear. Because nobody expects to get sick. I was younger, and it was really hard to accept. We do not have any medical equipment. So again, friends and family do not understand us. Many of them say, you look fine, you don't look sick. And again, we're so many times misunderstood by friends and family. There is a spectrum of symptoms for bronchial NTM patients, individuals. Some experience little fatigue, mild fatigue. Others deal with greater fatigue, similar to fatigue with post-bacterial viral infections. Some of us have side effects from medication. Others are able to tolerate medication. There's so many variables that come into play when a person is newly diagnosed and their treatment protocol. I was unable to work full time since I worked in healthcare and I had been constantly exposed to germs. At that time, there wasn't an option of Zoom meetings. So it was really challenging to say the least. I really wanted to do more, and I was unable to do more because the diagnosis and the meds impacted my energy level, etc. When you're diagnosed with any chronic issue, it affects a lot of areas of your life, your personal, social, your career, your financial outlook. But you do learn to adapt and accept over time. I read years ago that it takes many years to really actually accept a chronic condition.
And how did you get started with bronchiectasis and NTM 360?
I've been with the COPD Foundation for years, responding to inquiries on NTM 360 social, doing monthly support groups, writing blog articles, and doing whatever else I can to assist individuals on the journey. I really am passionate about helping other people because I know what it was like in the very beginning. The first year, it was really felt so alone and isolated. Again, I'm a nurse, and none of my friends ever heard of it. And when they put the, words, MAC, atypical TB, and I mentioned that to people, they kind of like shied away from me, even my own family. It was just a really tough time. I had to visit my mother, and she took utensils out. She was thinking it was like TB, and she put my own utensils on the table. It was just a really, really challenging time, but we've come such a long way, and I'm so grateful for the pharma and biotech companies and everyone who has gotten involved in this space over the years. It's really a dream coming true, the progress that we have made.
So, how has your understanding of mental health evolved since being diagnosed?
Back then, the stigma of mental health still exists. And I really feel that since the pandemic, many individuals report anxiety. People with chronic issues have anxiety at times due to the fear of the unknown. And some do end up getting depressed for a multitude of reasons. Um, One is the limitations for some individuals imposed by a chronic respiratory issue. Um, I The biopsychosocial aspect of a person needs to be addressed further by the healthcare team. You go into a doctor's office and everybody zooms in on your physical symptoms, your cough, your fatigue, etc. In the past, doctors did not ask you about the psychosocial component. They're doing that more these days. But even at the major research centers, a lot of times they do an assessment. But, when you're at the research center, often you're really sick. And a lot of people do not follow up with a counseling or psychosocial assessment when they return home. And it's really important for people to be aware that over time, dealing with the chronic illness can lead to, um, you know, psychological challenges. So it is really important that you follow up and keep in community with others who may understand you.
Yeah, and I see you present, every single day in the social group that we have on Bronchiectasis and NTM 360, and some of the things that you talk to patients about just seem so meaningful. Just to know that they have that community support in a setting where everybody has, a chronic disease, bronchiectasis or NTM. So it's nice to see that this subject is so near and dear to your heart that you're able to give some valuable, input and insight to everybody.
Thank you, Alyssa.
What strategies or tools do you find helpful for managing stress?
There are a multitude of strategies. It depends upon the individual, your age, your background, etc. It's really important that we face our reality, that we have a chronic issue. We will not be understood by many other people, and we have to accept that. We have to try to be the best that we can under, present circumstances. I find it's really important to identify any losses you may encounter with a chronic illness. Identify what you feel is something that you are most able to do something about. In the beginning, I had many losses. Lost, the career I had, and some personal, social. I could go on for hours about that. But I became involved in a church group, and the leader, just pointed out in conversation that I've had so many losses. So I'm mentioning that because if you don't identify the losses, you're not able to go through a process of grieving and then moving on. There's a theory in psychology called the acceptance and commitment theory. And it's about individuals stop denying what they're facing or struggling with and accept the feelings that are appropriate for such a condition as a chronic condition, and then go forward in your life. Because if you accept this chronic issue, then you're able to take action steps towards your best possible health instead of continuing to dwell on your diagnosis and making your diagnosis your whole life and spiral downwards. So if we accept a new normal, or I always say my imperfect life, then we can go forward. It's really important to get up every day. I, take one day at a time. I plan out my daily things to do list. You plan, I always call it 3 Ps: plan, prioritize, and pace yourself.
Did you come up with
And
that?
I think I read that somewhere, but it's stuck in my head, the 3 Ps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whenever I feel like I'm overdoing something, I remember PPP.
I like that. A way to prioritize.
Yes, it is so important to prioritize. And you may have to reprioritize on a daily basis or restructure your physical and emotional lifestyle to meet the challenges you're facing out now. And some patients, some individuals have to plan out their day. If, airway clearance is important for every patient with a respiratory issue. Plan out your day if you have to do nebulizers, if you have to go to the lab, a doctor, medications, etc. Other than medical appointments, anything on your things to do list, if you can't do it today, put it on your things to do list for tomorrow. Do not have rigid expectations of yourself. I used to be that way in the past, and I try to let go. I was a really type A, and then I had to turn into a type CD at times. When you don't have the stamina to do what you really want to do, it's really hard. And there are variables that affect you, such as the weather, humidity, rain, etc. So you just have to put a task on for another day and don't put too much stress on yourself.
Yeah. I think that too alone is a learning curve, trying to keep on telling yourself that it doesn't need to be a type A where every day that is structured, go with the flow and see how you're doing. That's really tricky. I mean, I have 3 kids and I have to have everything scheduled out to the T, and days that they get thrown off, it's really hard, and that feels overwhelming. Even though the things that I have on my to-do list, they don't need to be done today. They'll still be there tomorrow. So that's challenging.
Yes, they will be there tomorrow. So just think of the, PPPs, plan, prioritize, it's different raising kids from, dealing with your health. But it's really important to be flexible. Think about, what is the most important in your life and what's the most important thing, and do that as number one.
Mhm.
And you really just have to think ahead as a person with a chronic issue. When I plan on going somewhere, I think about the venue I'm going to be meeting people beforehand. I really have to think ahead of where you go and when you're going, and schedule socializing or events for your best times of the day. Some people who deal with fatigue are better in the morning and not better in the evening. So we want to be able to live productive, good lives. Just really plan your time on when you feel the best.
Right. Rearranging your schedule and not letting the disease kind of take over, but trying to rearrange things so that way you can work with it and do things at your best time that you're capable of. So prioritizing self-care activities like relaxation, hobbies, mindfulness, those are all things that can help reduce stress and elevate a person's overall mental health. What kind of things do you do? Do you have any hobbies that you maybe had to change from before to not, to your current and kind of where you're at right now? Do you try to do some sort of relaxation techniques, or maybe do you get massages or do breathing techniques? What kind of things do you do to invest into yourself?
I'm glad you're bringing up the self-care question because it's really important. Self-care is everything with a chronic illness. I don't want to sound selfish. When we were growing up, self-care, nobody spoke about that.
Right.
But you have to learn to put yourself first. When you're on an airplane, the stewardess always says, put the oxygen on yourself. That little info commercial they do on the planes, but you have to, right? The younger generation learns more about self-care than a lot of people my age. But I feel that self-care is taking the time each day, put it aside to do the airway clearance, to do exercise, to prepare healthier foods, making your health a priority. and do whatever you can to simplify your life. Question about a massage. Yes, I treated myself to massage. I've done a lot of holistic measures in the past, Tai Chi and Reiki. I've tried everything under the sun. Some help, some don't. But in the middle of the winter, I will not go indoors and do any of that. I take yoga. Well, now I'm home for a month until the peak of the flu season is over. But I took yoga classes every week and I walked, and there's so many different self-care options that are out there. But a thing that's important is to find people that you enjoy being with, have fun with, and always have somebody to talk to. And we offer that through the Bronc NTM 360 social online, email, or a conversation through the 1-888-833 number. So there's so many things that we could do to take care of ourselves, but somebody has to realize how important the self-care is and not do everything else and then put your health care at the end of the day. Because if you're putting your healthcare needs at the end of the day, such as airway clearance, you're going to be too tired and you're not going to do it.
So, Katie, given your experience, do you have any recommendations that you would give somebody who's having a hard time right now?
So I would definitely recommend to find some kind of community. And you learn over time when you have a chronic issue, it's better to have a few friends than, a large quantity of friends, people that will really support you and make you realize, speak about your abilities and not, your negative side. Or not everybody refers to a chronic illness as a disability, but we have to look at the positive side. Don't feel like you have to live your life in the bubble. It's important to be cautious, such as I mentioned before, with preventative strategies such as infection control. But you can't feel like so rigid about everything in your life. You just, excuse me, little frog, adjust your vision and envision better days ahead. And if people are really having, the word emotional challenges, which come along with many chronic conditions, if you're not getting what you need from a support group on online or an in-person, find a therapist if needed. But please make sure that the therapist has good experience in dealing with chronic health conditions. Just don't pick anyone out of the phone book, because there is a shortage of mental health workers who truly understand the impact of chronic respiratory illnesses. They have not lived through the experience. Or ask your PCP for referral to a therapist. Psychology Today website has articles constantly on mental health. And they have, you put in your zip code and they can refer you to a counselor in your area. Some of these are in person, or nowadays they do it through telehealth, which is great. You don't have to leave the house if you're, concerned in the winter. Just going out to someone's office or concerned with being in a waiting room. And we just have to view that every challenge in your life, it's kind of a second chance. It gives you a new vision of what's important. And I really made me open my eyes of what is worth your time, what is not worth your time, who is worth your time, who is not worth your time. And I look back, I see some positives. Yes, there were a lot of challenges, but I do see some positive events that took place over the years that I really treasure and will treasure forever. So if you're just newly diagnosed or going through, you may think that, everything is really, really bad. But you look back, you will see that you have learned a lot, and you may appreciate some of the experiences. I met a lot of great friends in the New York City support group years ago, and they were really inspirational for me. So we have to look at the positive as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming and speaking with me today, Katie. I know that this subject is near and dear to your heart. And for a lot of people, it's something that's hard to talk about. Having mental health and going through a chronic disease is not something that is, for the faint of heart. It takes a lot. It takes a community. It takes mental grit, and it takes resources. And we so appreciate you being on the other side of the computer and the one who answers and helps support in Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 social. So thank you so much. And it was so great to have you.
You were so welcome. And for the audience, just like the symptoms, physical symptoms, some, at minor fatigue, some have greater fatigue, same with the emotional piece. Some, it's harder to accept the chronic, and some are fine and go about their business and whatever. You really have to just tune into what your challenges are, and whatever they are, just try to seek resources so that you can, build on your life, make the best quality of life that you really can go forward, be proactive and not, reactive, have hope. And I always say, just believe in miracles. You never know what's around the corner.
Yeah. Thank you again, Katie.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Alyssa.
Thank you for tuning in to the Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 podcast. We hope that you found today's episode helpful and inspiring. You can stay connected by joining our online community, following our social media, and visiting our website for more resources. And of course, subscribe to this podcast and join us next time for more insight, stories, and tips to help you live well with bronchiectasis and NTM lung disease. Until then, thanks for listening and be well.